Thanks for sharing that part, because yeah, I was struggling with that one, y'all. I was like, no, we got to find somebody. But here I am. God's in charge. My name is Theresa. I'm an alcoholic. Grateful to be here. Grateful to be sober because of a loving God. Good to see all of you and all the faces. Thank you for being here. It's an honor and a privilege to participate in my recovery. I want to welcome anybody who's new. Welcome home. We've been praying for you. I'm glad you're here. And all the old timers, thank you for my life and my sobriety. My sobriety date is March 29, 1990. But for the grace of God, I've been with you for the last 30 years. And interesting enough, this prayer is I'm getting emotional. Okay. And ever since Ali said it, I've been really praying on this. I've been praying on this to not make it academic. Let me just say this out loud. I'm always uncomfortable, and this is always awkward and vulnerable. But I've been praying on it because I'm always trying really hard to be one of you, and I just have to say that. I want to be broken. I want to look at my flaws. I'm always seeking to uncover, discover, and discard. But somehow what kept coming up to me is that it is an honor and a privilege to share with you how this program has shaped and molded myself and helped to develop a relationship with a power greater than me. And this prayer is so fitting. And if you could just bear with me for a minute, I'm going to point out a couple of people who are not even in the program, who were instruments to me and in demonstration of this prayer. I share a lot in my story of how everyone in my family are alcoholics and addicts, and that there are 4 members who aren't. And out of these 4 members, of family members who aren't, live this prayer. Didn't realize at the time that they too were planting seeds for me for the day that I met you. In particular, 2 members, and I'm going to talk a little bit about them because I believe they are my role models, and I seek them in the rooms. That's my grandmother and my father. At my father's memorial, I read this prayer because I believe he was a demonstration of it. St. Francis himself, and it talks about it in the 12 and 12, indicated that this is something that we strive to live towards. He himself couldn't live it and be it completely because of our human experience, because of the ego that exists here in this planet and in this dimension, I call it. Perhaps the only way to finally reach this place is through death, or if I join the Himalayas or the mountains and I disappear from any other human existence. It's so much easier, right, to apply this. But I watch my father living amongst the other humans be a demonstration of this. But I also watched all the spiritual work he needed to do in order to be in that place. I share this often. I hold my dad to high esteem. And I quote him often like Confucius. And I respect him as a spiritual man, as a spiritual leader. He's a priest. And I remember going to him early in my recovery And I gave him the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And anybody who knows me, once Daddy gives the seal of approval, I'm all in. And I wanted Daddy to see if what you guys had going on matched his spiritual maturity. And my father took the whole day to read the book cover to cover. And after he finished reading it, he brought me into his library. And my father's library is like a library at a seminary. And he placed the big book in the middle of the table of that library. And he told me, I want you to see all these books. You see all these books? And I had to look around the room and I saw all the books. He said, all of these books are in this one book. And with this, you don't need anything else. That was my seal of approval. And I began to follow everything in this book. I had an opportunity to get a list of all the books that Dr. Bob and the new folks, started this program. They were reading some heavy books, man. They were reading some heavy books. And we talk about the program of Alcoholics Anonymous in this literature being inspired by these men and one woman. But they were inspired by ancient texts. And how do they tell a drunk like me that these religious people perhaps were right? What are the things that I need to do that suffer from alcoholism, which is selfish and self-centered and self-seeking by nature, to become right-sized and to be in alignment with this power? And you came up with these steps. I've been quoting Ralph. Most people have heard Ralph W. And Ralph is a part of my mind. I hear him and many old timers when I got here. And I think I was telling Reggie the other day that I quote Ralph so much and hear him so much that for 28 years of my recovery, I've been repeating this saying, okay? And at this point, Ralph should be so right-sized because my prayer to God has been this. Because I heard Ralph say this when I was new. He said, grow God, shrink Ralph. Grow God, shrink Ralph. And I adopted that prayer so literally that for 28 years, I'm telling you, I'm 30 now. It was only 2 years ago I realized this when he said it one more time. For 28 years, my prayer has been, grow God, shrink Ralph. Grow God, shrink Ralph. Not once did it occur to me. It was only 2 years ago. We were at a conference and he said it and I was like, oh, I'm supposed to say, grow God, shrink Theresa. Grow God, shrink Theresa. So at this point, Ralph should be really shrunk, okay? So he might not be knowing with all the stuff he's going through in his life why he has been shrunk so much. It's because he's been part of my daily prayer. I don't know if I should apologize to Ralph of all his spiritual experiences, but it's because I've been praying to God that he would shrink you so he can grow in your life. And it's only in the last 2 years that I've been like, oh, I'm supposed to be shrinking Theresa. But I think it still worked. And to me, that's what the program does in order for me to come close to living the prayer of St. Francis. It is necessary for me to be removed of self in order to think of others. The entire prayer of St. Francis is saying, let's reduce the ego so much so that I am entirely prepared to give up anything and everything that I believe I want, I need, I have to have, I desire, you need to be and do. That's all that this prayer is saying. What an order. And the reason why it's a challenge is because I have human experiences that says I want to be loved. But this prayer tells me that I need to love you instead of wanting to be loved. Now, for a girl who was not wanted, you know what I mean? Abandoned, oh my goodness. All I've ever wanted was to be loved. This prayer says I need to give that up. How do I do that? Do the steps. If I continuously inventory and I am asking that self be removed and to make myself useful, that is the only way I'm going to consider you instead of me. Now, most of you know I've been a caregiver for a lot of years. And when I said, God, take all of me, what will you have me be? What will you have me do? I returned to my religious practice that's ancient in my family, became a priest. I'm like, just bear with me, y'all. I'm uncomfortable, whatever. And in my spiritual religious practice, becoming an ordained priest required that I marry God. My life no longer belonged to me. I have to follow these rules. I have books that literally tell me what I can eat, what I can wear, where I can go, how I'm going to live, how I'm going to die, what I can do, what I can't do. And all of it says I can't ask for anything. I need to serve God and only God. Can't work in a job. I have to serve only God's children. I could never ask for me. There's not one prayer that I can demand, request, anything for Theresa. What an order. I wish I would have known that before I signed up for it. But my dad told me that in order to achieve that obligation, I had these tools to assist me. And that I needed to turn to these tools in order to accomplish that. As a caregiver to most of my abusers, I've had to stretch my spiritual muscles to get rid of self. Now, I hear a lot of people in the rooms tell me, I hear language like this, and I'm just going to go with this, y'all. This is my dance with this prayer. I hear a lot of people use words like set boundaries, learn how to say no. Not too long ago, somebody mentioned I need to take off my cape. Put the mask on yourself before you put it on somebody else. You need to do self-care and self-love and look out for Theresa for a change. You have to think about what Theresa needs to do to take care of Theresa. If I do that, I'm not following God's will for me. There is a difference when I'm driven by self and I'm taking care of you or being service to you because I have a hidden agenda. You use language like people pleasing, or I do it because I want validation, or I want love from you, which is opposite from this prayer. I'll take care of you and show up for you because if I do that, then you'll say I'm good, or you say I'm a good girl, or you'll give me brownie points, or you'll be kind to me, or you won't abandon me, you'll love me. That's driven by self, not God's usefulness. There's a difference. This prayer is an invitation for me to get rid of self enough that when I love you is because that is my assignment to do so. Despite your arrogance, despite your being mean, I'm around a lot of people who are not kind. I very rarely get a thank you. But it becomes okay if that's my assignment. Trying to figure out how to explain this in a short period of time on how I live. Each and every time that I'm disturbed, I only have these steps to help me to get undisturbed and to get in alignment so that I can love rather than to be loved. If I don't do that, I'm caught up in my other motives and my other intentions. I play God. I try to make you do something and be something. That's my neutral position. I told you I watched my dad be ridiculed, ostracized, disliked, his house burned down, his church burned down, and immediately he went to forgiveness. I always use this as an example. I'm gonna go back to Daddy for a second. My father had Parkinson's, and he was in a nursing home. And my father was Qigong master, and Daddy healed people in the community, and he was active. He was so active in changing lives and helping people, living selflessly. And I asked him, Daddy, what is this like for you? How could you possibly live in a place right now that you've done so much in your life, and now people have to feed you, change your diaper, they lock the door because you can't leave unless they take you outside, they tell you when to go to bed and when to watch television. What is that like for you, Daddy? Is this painful? Is this uncomfortable? And he said, no, this is my assignment. How else would the nurse be able to do her job? How else would the doctor be able to do his job? This was an agreement that I had, that this time in my life, I will have this illness so that those who have a purpose to help others in this way, I would be available for them to fulfill their purpose in life. I don't know about y'all, but I would have never came up with that. I was like, that's a whole other level, y'all. I was like, what? He said, I am grateful and I am honored to be as sick as I am. I'm gonna give you another example. Daddy was comatose a lot, and he would sit on the couch, you know, like vegging out. And I was cooking one day, and I said to Daddy, I said, you know, Daddy, I think you will be more comfortable if you go to the bedroom and you can lay down. And when dinner's ready, I'll have you come up and don't worry about food being ready. I'll let you know. And I think you'll be more comfortable if you lay down in the bedroom and take a nap until dinner's done. You want to lay down in the bedroom? He said no. I said it again. Daddy, don't you think you'd be more comfortable in the bedroom? You could stretch out, you could fall asleep, you can relax until dinner's ready. Wouldn't you be more comfortable in the bedroom? He said, no. I took a minute and I said, you know what, Daddy? The truth of the matter is I would be more comfortable if you're in the bedroom. Because I don't know what to do when you're sitting in the couch looking like that while I'm cooking. So really, I think I'll be more comfortable if you go to the bedroom until dinner's done. And this is what my daddy said. He said, I know. He said, I know. That means the whole time I was imposing, excuse the language, my shit on him. You follow me? He knew it. He didn't say to me, stop putting your stuff on me. Leave me alone. Stop bugging me. Look at your own crap. All he kept saying was, no. Until I arrived to that conclusion, he said, I know. All is well. That to me is that prayer. My grandmother is another woman who is my role model of this prayer. Anyone in Al-Anon and in AA would look at my grandmother and say, she got codependency issues. She's a scapegoat. She handicaps people. That's not what I see in my grandmother when I see this prayer. Here was a woman who took care of her mother, her children, her children's children, and then their children on food stamps. Everybody always got something for Christmas, even if it was a pair of socks. Everybody ate. When my uncle went to Vietnam, my grandmother dressed like Jesus Christ the entire time he was in Vietnam as a promise to God that she would give up her life in that way of representing Jesus until the day he came home and all the soldiers came home. And most of all, her children were alcoholics and addicts. They robbed from her. They never said thank you to her. Even I did. I would speak poorly to her. I would demand that she give me what I wanted when I wanted it. Not once did I see her say, you're rude, you're inconsiderate, you're unkind. What I saw in her was, I know that whatever it is that I do is because I'm in alignment with my assignment, even if you don't know it. That I can love you rather than be loved. That I can forgive you rather than to be forgiven by you. She wasn't a martyr. She wasn't superwoman. I didn't see her act like a victim because everybody did what they did. She did it with a grace and with a certainty that it was necessary for her to be that way to be in alignment with God. That's St. Francis. That's what these 12 steps do for us. I see it in the rooms. I see it in the rooms. How is it that we're able to have this homeless man who smells? This is what I saw when I came in the rooms. I saw a homeless man who reeked of not bathing for months, pushing a cart, come into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And you guys hugged him anyway. And you told him there was cookies and coffee. It was the one place that he came to that he was welcomed. I don't know if anybody paid attention to that, but I know I did. Who does that? Even the look on his face was, who does that? Most people throw me away and shoo me away. And then I watched this man get the cookies and the coffee. And he was uncomfortable and he was sitting in the corner. And you guys knew his name. He would say, "Good to see you, James. I hope you come back." And sometimes he would be mean and he would be rude and he would talk to himself or say, "Leave me alone." He would say, "Good to see you, James. Hope you come back." Then I see him come back again, and next thing you know, he got a newcomer chip. "Good to see you, James. Congratulations, got a newcomer chip." And he might come back and get that newcomer chip for a year. And you know what he said? "What's the matter with you, James? Get it together, James. I heard you say, keep coming back. We love you, James. It's so good to see you." And we hugged him and he was funky and dirty. Then next thing you know, he took a 30-day chip. Then he took a year cake and he took a bath. And he got somewhere to live. And he got a job. That was huge for me. James didn't know how to love. James didn't even know how to be loved. James was bitter and angry, but we loved him anyway. How do I take that experience, practice these principles in all my affairs, and live that way, not just in the room when the homeless guy comes in, but the professional who walks in the room, and treat them the same way, and then go into my home, into my community, into my job, practicing that. Oh, what an order. I think the place that I'm at today is I don't want to apologize for that anymore. I don't want to justify or rationalize that or defend that. I live like that. And there's some people don't understand it. I think that's why I'm emotional. I don't share about it often. I do my best to live by this prayer, whether you get it or not, whether people understand it or not, whether others don't agree with it or not. I have role models, not from my grandmother and my father, but from people like Sandy Beach, Polly Pistol. See, the images of my father and my grandmother, I look for in the rooms. My teachers, And the list goes on and on. St. Francis himself didn't do it 100%. The reason for St. Francis' prayer was he believed in poverty. He gave up wealth like many other saints. When I study saints, and in our literature it says we are not saints, right? They use that language a lot. We are not saints. We strive for spiritual progress. I've always said the reason why I believe that line is there, that we are not saints, is because this is my understanding of a saint. The reason why a saint does miracles is not because they're flawless. It's not because they're not human. It's because they are human. They make mistakes. They suffer greatly in life. What makes me different from a saint is that if we look at the stories of all the saints, including St. Francis, that despite every obstacle, every persecution, willing to accuse of burning them, accusing them of lying, of coercing them to defy God and go against what they're believing, threatening to kill their family unless they admit that God isn't. You can imprison them. You can ostracize them. Despite all the suffering, all the calamity, all the problems, all the disparity, there's something that they do. They never defied knowing that God is, and they had a purpose, was to be his instrument. That's why they say we're not saints. Because what I do sometimes when those things happen, I say maybe there isn't a God. This is wrong. This is unfair. This is not okay. And then I do this work and I get right size one more time. I'm going to sum this up with this paragraph after the prayer in the 12 and 12. It says, as beginners in meditation, we might now reread this prayer several times, very slowly, savoring every word and trying to take in the deep meaning of each phrase and idea. It will help if we can drop all resistance to what our friend says. For in meditation, debate has no place. We rest quietly with the thought of someone who knows, so that we may experience and learn. Every day I take this into meditation. How do I love the unlovable? How do I forgive sometimes what seems to be the unforgivable acts? How do I bring light when there's darkness? God, how do you want me to bring light? This person is bitter and they're angry and they hate me and they're spewing venom. I want to hear the voice that says, Theresa, set a boundary, say no, walk away, get away from them, detach. No, I need a clean house so I can get an intuitive thought. Love them anyway. And be a demonstration that God is. When I'm in that place, I'm not abused. I'm not abused. But when I'm not in that place, I think I'm being abused. I'm being you follow me? I'm being mistreated. I'm being disrespected. You shouldn't. I've experienced both. And now I know the difference. I know the difference when I'm in this prayer and I'm doing my assignment, despite you, despite how you act, despite whether you like me or not, or treat me a certain way, respect me. How I know I'm in it? Because I'm not tripping off of that. I'm doing what I need to do in this assignment. And when I start tripping, I clean house. And if it is not my assignment, then I'll say, no, I need to go over here. You follow me? I won't be doing that. And even that brings light. Even that brings love. Even that brings forgiveness. It's a tall order. But in order to succeed in this prayer, the way it's outlined, I must be in the present moment. I must be awake. Have a clean house so that I can have an intuitive thought. Have a brain to use. That my thought is in alignment with that. Sanity has to have returned so that my next indicated action, I always say, stands in higher authority. It is the assignment of my employer, my director. And when I'm in that place, I know God is. And I see my father, and I see my grandmother. Because I didn't know that they were my teachers of my future. And I'm proud that God saw fit to have me come from the experience I came from, carry me into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, to give me this book so that I can follow, to shrink Theresa and grow God, so that I can do the best that I can to strive towards loving all of God's children, to have an eternal death of ego and self, so that I can find the freedom that this prayer brings. Because we get to freedom being a channel of God's peace. I will not apologize today for my relationship with God, as none of you ever apologize for your relationship with God today. And I don't walk on water, and I'm not floating on a lotus flower. I'll end with this. As my daddy taught me, the more spiritual you get, the more you disrobe, the more that is revealed, the more firmly my feet are planted on this ground. Having a human experience as a spiritual being. I want to thank each and every one of you for being a demonstration of God's love, patience, tolerance, for being broken, for teaching me what to be like and what not to be like, for being mentors and role models and words of wisdom and guidance, for being the support system to be able to do God's work. Because without you, I don't know where I would be. I'm so glad God brought me to you so that I can fulfill my purpose in life, which is to stay sober, carry the message, and help all those still sick and suffering in and out of these rooms wherever I go. Thank you so much for allowing me to share.